I've been bullet journaling for longer than I've been playing the Hurdy-Gurdy. I'm basically living out of my notebooks. For me, the bullet journal is the place where I keep everything. My calendar, my notes, my list. But what does it have to do with the Hurdy-Gurdy? Everything. In my bullet journals, you can watch the journey from the notes I took after my very first Gurdy lesson to now tracking the events that I'll play at and creating the set lists. So I decided to look through every single one of them to see what they actually do for me as a Gurdyist. I decided to share this with you in hope that some of these threads and trackers might be useful to you, regardless of whether you do the whole bullet journal thing or not. If you come from the bullet journal side of the internet, here's a video where I explain to you what the Hurdy-Gurdy is. If you come from the Gurdy side of the internet, let me give you a quick introduction to the bullet journal. The method was created by writer Carol, who also runs a very informative site on it. I'll link it in the description below. He describes it as a mindfulness practice designed as a productivity system. The concept of zooming in over the pages from year to month to maybe a week or a day gives you an overview over the things that lie ahead, while allowing you to react in a flexible way to what is there right in the moment. The bullet journal can be kept in a minimalist style, but people have also discovered it for creative expression with lush monthly setups or daily diaries. On the spectrum from minimalist to artist, I fall on both ends. It all comes down to the amount of time I have and the mood that I'm currently in. When looking through all of my journals, I grouped the Gurdy related entries into 7 categories. We'll go through them one by one, and I hope some of them will be useful to you. Again, you don't need a bullet journal for this. You could simply use a sheet of paper or even have a dedicated Hurdy-Gurdy journal. What you need in a bullet journal is an index for all the notes that you make. At some point, I started to have so many collections or spreads or trackers about Hurdy-Gurdys that I started making my own indices. You could also just take your regular index and color code it. That helps you to keep an overview over all of your Gurdy entries. The tracker that I currently use the most is my practice tracker. Every little square means half an hour of practice. I make a dot that signifies how many half hours of practice I have had that day. And then I connect them with a line. After each week, I sum up how many hours I've been practicing for. And at the end of each month, I also sum up how many hours I've been practicing that month. Not only practicing, but also just playing in general, going to sessions, playing concerts, whatever. What that allows me to do is to see my overall playing volume. I started seeing making music as a kind of sport after getting injured on the Hurdy-Gurdy. When I know that I have an event or an intensive Hurdy-Gurdy phase in 3 months, then I'm not gonna easily jog until then and only play half an hour a day and then suddenly I have this super intense phase. But I will slowly, gradually increase the volume, my overall playing volume, until I reach that phase, so that my body is not shocked and surprised that it suddenly has to run a marathon. The practice tracker allows me to do that. I can easily see, okay, I've been playing for 5 days, I definitely should take a rest day. I can see whether overall I should slowly start increasing my volume because I haven't been playing in a while, or the other way around. Another thing that I occasionally track when I practice is how fast I can do which coup. Write down on which date you achieved how many beats per minute with the metronome on which coup. It's just a fun thing to track. You see how empty this tracker is? That is my scales practice tracker. Every gray square signifies one time that I've been practicing this scale. If you don't want to have a dedicated tracker for your Hurdy-Gurdy practice, you can also integrate it if you have a habit tracker. Yes, I practiced today, and then cross it off at the end of the day. A spread that I've been using time and again is the tune tracker. I write down the tunes that I want to learn. I usually go about it like I first learn the melody, then I learn to do something meaningful on the trumpet with it, and in the end I combine it and bring it up to the speed that I want to play it in. Something that I haven't kept up for a long time, but maybe it's useful for someone, is a kind of practice log, where you really write down the date, what are your goals, and how practice was for you, whether you achieved the goals, what was difficult, what went well, and that can give you a really detailed insight into your practicing. For a while it was useful also in trying to get more structured and more goal-oriented. Over time I also shifted to just quickly logging 1-2 sentences of what have I been doing that day. If I have many different things that I want to keep an overview over, then this is kind of what I do. Speaking of achieving your goals, I also keep track of which goals I have. That can be a simple list, or it can be a kind of graphic where I write down multiple paths that I could go. This graphic I made at around the beginning of this year, and I'm so pleased with how many things I achieved this year. I didn't think that so many things would happen. If I didn't have this tracker, then I would probably not be able to look back and be so very satisfied with the year. Something that has been helpful from the start was to write out exercises. Often it's just easier to have it in front of you and to know, okay, I need that many notes on the left hand, and then I make a coup, and which kind of coup at what note, and so on. And usually I don't really use sheet music, but for exercises I just write it out. It's not only an option to write out your exercises, but to also make lists of your exercises and to kind of make little building blocks of what you would like to incorporate into your practice and which exercises you will do when. I wrote my exercises on tiny little post-its. I had a massive post-it phase with my bullet journaling for a while. I made kind of exercise collections for different things that I want to achieve. And then I would plan out my practice for the week and would take out the little post-its of the exercise, post it on different days, and kind of create an exercise program for myself. Speaking of post-its, one thing I find really useful in a bullet journal is a Kanban board. Kanban is a method where you simply have a few tracks or lanes. You have a backlog of tasks and your lanes are next up, in progress, in that and that stage, and done. You can also use it for your Hurdy-Gurdy practice, like have a backlog of tunes, then write down a lane for, okay, this tune I'm working on the melody, shift the post-it over there. You get the gist. One thing where I find pen and paper really useful is for analyzing things. I have multiple diagrams and lists and analyses of different things in my bullet journal. Here you can see the notes from my first Hurdy-Gurdy lesson. I also use the bullet journal to analyze tunes. Before I try to do some kind of coup, I want to know its name and its address. Writing down where exactly on the wheel you want your hand to go is a great way of progressing in learning different kinds of coups. And I also have a circle of fifths there that remains shamefully unused. At one point I also wrote down what for me it means to become a good Hurdy-Gurdy player. Whatever you need to analyze really, you can just take your journal and write it down. Another really useful tracker that I use all the time is my Gurdy lesson tracker. I simply write down for how many lessons I've paid, because I usually pay in advance, and then I fill out when they are due, like what's the next date for the next lesson, and then make a little check mark when it has actually taken place. You can also watch my progress of correctly writing the word paid. Similarly to the practice log, I also tried for a while to make a lesson log. I find it useful before a lesson to write down the questions that I have, and then after the lesson to write down what I've learned. But one thing that's really useful to have is an overview over the Hurdy-Gurdy courses and classes and workshops that you would like to attend during the year. I also put the course or workshop or festival preparation into my bullet journal. One place where I still keep post-its is Setlists. Having the tunes on the post-it makes it really easy to shift stuff around, write down the keys of the tunes on the post-its. Highly recommend. And by now we've reached the Miscellanious category. Here are a few things that didn't fit any category, but they also really make sense to have. One of them is a checklist for when you go look at a second-hand Hurdy-Gurdy. What are the things that you need to check in order to make sure you buy a functioning instrument? Another one is my Hurdy-Gurdy wish list. I keep track of things that I want to buy in the future or that would be really great to have but maybe not very necessary. That really helps you prevent impulse buying a Digi-Gurdy at midnight when you would really like to practice and you just want a very quiet Hurdy-Gurdy that you can practice at midnight. And another thing that I rarely use, but when I use it, it's really important and really effective. Little boosters for myself. This is from when I had my injuries and I couldn't really use my arms. And so I tried to see the positive side of it and wrote down for myself that finally now I have the opportunity to really disassemble my technique and take a proper look at it and get out stronger than I was before. And that actually helped. I also at the point vowed to become forearm Popeye, but I have to say I'm not particularly convinced, but at least my arms don't hurt anymore. That's it for today. I hope you found something in here useful and stay tuning.